Hey everyone, so I know it's been a while since I've done a DIY video. I'm still working on one, so just sit tight. But I've got a really interesting vlog for you this evening. Sorry my face is like white right here because this light in front of me is like really like super duper bright. It's gonna give me a headache, I'm sure, because I already have a headache from my mild concussion I got last week. If you don't know anything about that, then check out my previous vlog. But anyhow, something I used to do that I don't do anymore, that I really miss, and I've decided I'm going to do again, that I'm going to get back into, is ghost hunting. And I've been thinking about it for a while. I have a friend who is a psychic medium, and she can see and talk to, and she can see spirits and she can communicate with them. Sometimes they don't always try to communicate back to her, but she tries to communicate with them, and they sometimes interact back. And so she's going to be on my team, and I asked a few Facebook friends, and so far no bites. But it's okay to do ghost hunting with just two people. You don't have to have a big team, but anyway, the point is, I've had this fascination with paranormal pretty much my whole life, ever since I was, I think, 11 or 12 years old, because I had an encounter when I was that age. This is going to be kind of a long-winded story, but I'm going to do my best to keep it interesting. I'm going to do my best to stop swiveling in my chair, sorry. But anyway, when I was 11 or 12 years old, I think the year was 1996. Yeah, I would have been 12, I think. Almost 13. No, it was with the winter of 1995. Yeah, I was 12. Anyway, it was December of 1995, and this is, back, in the 90s. Things were different in the 90s. We didn't have social media, not everybody owned a computer. You can imagine that, like every other household maybe had a computer in their house. And computers were these big, clunky things that came in a big box, and they were very expensive, and if you wanted one, you had to make a desk, you had to have a desk for it and everything, and it would be a shared computer, because back then if you had a computer in your house and everybody wanted to use it, everybody had to take turns and wait their turn, and the internet back then sucked. It was dial-up. It sucked. If you were using the internet at the time, like if you were using the internet, no one could call your house. And back then, this is when there were no cell phones, so if someone wanted to call you, they couldn't just pick up the phone and call your personal cell phone and reach you immediately. So if you were using the internet, no phone calls. So anyway, back to my story. Things being different in the 90s. A lot of houses were ugly back in the 90s. They were still ugly from a time period maybe in the 70s or early 80s when everything was avocado green and brown and orange and yellow, and with hints of white here and there. And so my grandparents' house was one of those houses. It had not been updated for a long time, since probably the late 1970s, and it was very ugly. There was this ugly green carpet running all through the house. The drapes were all like orange with brown checkered, not like orange or orange with like this like brown like stripe stuff running through them, and I mean the whole house was so ugly. And we were spending Christmas at my grandparents' house, actually. We lived in Birmingham, Alabama, and we drove up to Louisville, Kentucky to spend Christmas with my grandparents. Now, my grandparents' house being so ugly wasn't the problem. The fact that it was creepy was the problem, because there were always cobwebs in all the corners. There was a crack in the basement floor, which meant that the house was sitting funny in the foundation. Like, it wasn't sitting plumb, it was sitting cockeyed. And so all of the doorways and some parts of the ceilings had cracks running through the drywall, and it was just, it looked like a haunted house to me. When I was little, I was scared to be there sometimes. It really bugged me. And so we're there visiting, and my sister at the time was, I think maybe, let's see, if I was 12, she would have been 7. Yeah, she would have been 7 years old, and she would have been in the 1st grade. I was in the 6th grade. And so we're there visiting. Now my grandparents didn't let us do anything, hardly ever. If there was nothing to do, and if there was anything to do, they wouldn't have allowed us to do it. So the place was dusty, it smelled funny. My grandmother would get up and fix us grits or eggs or whatever the heck we wanted in the morning. That was the nice thing. That's like my fondest memory of my grandmother, is her getting up off her ass early in the morning to fix the grandkids these wonderful breakfasts that were from the heart, really. And the bedrooms, oh my gosh, very little sunlight came through. It always seemed like the rooms were always dark. And there had never been any ghost activity in this house before. We're talking about a house that was built in the 1940s. No ghost activity that anyone had ever told me about, because I did ask after the fact. And it was just a creepy house. So we're there visiting. I've said that like 1,000 times. So we're there visiting, and bedtime is early because the grown-ups want to have their cocktails and watch TV before they go to bed. They don't want the kids getting in the way. So we're there in the one of the spare rooms, me and my sister, and there's two twin-sized beds in this room with a nightstand in between, a window above the nightstand, a mirror with a table thing underneath it on the opposite wall, a big closet that you couldn't really get into because there's too much shit sitting in front of it, and there was a reclining chair. I think it was a reclining chair. It's some kind of like upholstered chair that my grandmother would sit in every day and watch TV. There was a TV in there too. And so it's really late at night, and I'm having trouble sleeping. And my sister, of course, is sound asleep, and it's cold in that room because there's a draft coming in through the window. Because there was a window unit an air conditioning unit in the window that was just covered up with plastic. It should have been removed and the window shut, but my grandparents were old, they couldn't really do those things. So there's this cold draft coming in, and I'm laying there, and it's like, oh my gosh, probably like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm laying there, and I'm just really tired, and I can't sleep. And I suddenly get this weird feeling, like I'm tossing and turning, and I suddenly get this feeling like there's something else in the room with me and my sister, like there's someone watching me. The feeling of being watched was really overpowering. And I tried to ignore it, I couldn't ignore it. So I'm laying there, and it occurred to me to just kind of look around the room, because I didn't want to, because I was afraid of what I would see. And I did it anyway, and there was a man standing in front of the door, and he wasn't an older man. He was a man maybe in his 40s. His hair was slicked back, he had on round glasses, he had a mustache, and he was wearing a suit. And I couldn't tell what era the suit was from. I really couldn't tell you. It didn't look old, but it didn't look super modern either. And he was just staring at me. And I noticed he had on a wristwatch, and I noticed he had on a wedding band. And I just stared back at him because I was just in shock. Like I felt like I couldn't move. And I remember staring at this guy for this longest time and him staring back. And then something happened. He started trying to say something to me. He moved his mouth like he was talking to me, like he was trying to say something. But no sound came out. And I sat up a little farther in bed, and he moved his mouth again, like he was trying to tell me something. And no sound came out again. And so I just sat there for a minute, and I tried to sit up. I sat up and I looked over at my sister, and when I looked up, the guy was gone. And I was too petrified to get up. I had to pee really bad, and I just decided to just lay there and just bear it, because I didn't want to get up. And then eventually, I laid there, tossed and turned some more, and eventually my grandmother got up. So I got up and spent time with her that morning, and I asked her if I could go through some of the family albums, because I wanted to find out who this guy was. And I spent the day looking through family albums. I didn't tell her that I'd seen a ghost, but I spent the whole day looking through all the family albums and found nothing. I found no one resembling this guy at all whatsoever. And so who he was remains a mystery to this day. I've told my family at this point. I told them when I was in my 20s. I finally came out about it because I just felt like people are going to wonder where I got this fascination with the paranormal. Oh, my battery's going to die. I have to wrap this up. So people would wonder that. And so I told them. But that's the story of my fascination with the paranormal. And ever since I saw that guy, I have tried to read every book I can get my hands on about ghosts and about ghost hunting. And I've got a handful of books here in my room, but I've read probably a stack of books, probably 10 feet high up to the fucking ceiling. So that's it. That's the story. But I'm getting back into ghost hunting because it's something that I'm good at and I miss a great deal. And hopefully I'll have more spooky stories for you guys. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and share and subscribe to my channel, and I'll catch you kids later.